Hi guys, in this video what we're going to do is sculpt out the flower portion of our exercise and really wrap the exercise up by creating a rendered turntable of our finished diorama to be submitted into the exercise Dropbox. What I've done to start off with here is found some examples of or references for the type of flower I want to create. So I'm just going to go for like something like these pink style flowers right here, these really pretty ones here. And I've also kind of found some stems that I'm kind of basing mine off of, because these are both the, from what I gather from pulling up references, this is the same plant, so there's not a lot of stems or anything like that, or thorns or anything like that leaves that come off of this. So kind of gives me a reference on how I want to create this, because I want to maybe put one or two flowers inside of my scene and then put some grass in here as well, so that way I have a nice stage for my insect. So what we're going to do to start this out is we could build this directly inside of our diorama. All we need to do is make sure that we're at the bottom of our subtool area right here. And what we'll do is we're going to append in a new shape, and what it'll do is create a layer below rock 3. So I'm going to click on append. I'm going to choose cylinder 3D. So you can see it went below rock right here. So I can select this, and this is going to be the stem of our flower right here. So go ahead, hit the R key or W key, it really doesn't matter as long as we get the gizmo right here, as long as we're like on move. And we're just going to adjust the scale of just the stem. You can see it's the only thing I have selected here, until it's what I want the flower to look like inside the scene. So just go ahead and pull this in. Be a little bit thicker than that. There we go. I'm kind of choosing the height. I don't want to look all stumpy like near one of these rocks. I want to actually have some height to it. Looks about good right there. You can see that I kind of placed it where it's on the rock right here. Because what I'll be able to do from here is be able to solo everything. We looked at this in the last video from the previous lectures, like soloing things to isolate your idea and kind of build off of it. I'm going to hit the Q key. So now when I hit the Q key, we've gone back out of the walk. Let's go back to Q. What I'm going to do is kind of sculpt out what I want the stem to look like, and I have my reference over here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of give it a little bit more bend to it, maybe a little bit of this bulb area, but then we're going to go right into building some of the petals on top of it, and then we'll maybe bend it or deform it in some way. So all I'm doing is increasing my size here and kind of moving things just a little bit. Increase that. I just want to make this a little bit asymmetrical. Because you know, this is kind of your goal in general, is kind of making your mesh not completely so symmetrical that it loses what makes it that shape. So like a stem, you know, it shouldn't be straight up and down like it's a spike or anything like that. It should have some little bit of bend to it. So I just put a little bit of unique bend to it. But now what I want to do, I'm going to go ahead and hit the quick save button. Quick save button's a great thing just because it'll add to your light box to the quick save area. So when I click on that, it makes a little quick save. You can lose it, but just in case, you know, you do have to close out Zbrush, it'll be back there. So nice little trick. Anyway, back to this guy. I'm going to go to the deformation area. Okay, so I have my cylinder selected from my subtools, and I'm going to deformation. What I'll be able to do here is maybe bend this a little bit. So if you see, if I kind of bend I can make some adjustments to this. Here we go. I like that S bend right here. Might be a little bit too aggressive. I think maybe at 1. So I'm just going to type in that field 1. And I just want a little bit of a bend to this. I just don't want it to look like a perfect flower. Okay, so here at the top here, what we're going to do is add in that little bit of a bulb area, like right here. And we're going to do this by using that insert mesh feature that we looked at in the previous class as well, where we're adding meshes based off of brushes. So just to review, in the geometry I have no subdivisions in here. If I have subdivisions in here, I'll have to delete them, either the higher ones or the lower ones, so that way the insert mesh will actually function. Otherwise you'll get an error. I'm going to type in I inside my brush field so that way I can find my primitives a little bit faster. Here's my insert sphere. I'm just going to put the sphere right here at the top. Just going to put that in there. Right there. Okay. Again, when you do this, you can see how this turns gray and this is white. Since this is both on the same subtool, all we've really done is, when we create the insert meshes, create a new object on top of the other one, and when we do that, it masks the one below, so we can move this guy around to where we want it to be, so that way it makes more visual sense here. And I'll hit the Q key. So what we're going to focus in on today is going to be a little bit different from what some of the things that we learned in the couple previous lectures about how we Z-remesh things and even out geometry. When I hit Shift F to look at the polyline and fill area to this, we can see the geometry here has a green color and a purple color. These are polygroups. And right now these polygroups are separated by two ideas, full object here, full object here. If I hold on to Control and Shift and click on one of these guys, we could actually start cycling through hiding these. So to kind of go back to the previous lecture where we were talking about hiding and masking things, we could also hide things by entire polygroups. That's one of the great things about using them, and we will use them quite a bit this semester. But what I want to do is not have two meshes like this. When I hide this guy, you can see that there's still the end here, and then there's still that area right there. I want those two to kind of fuse together. Now Z-remesher is not going to do that. If we were hitting the Z-remesher, and we'll go ahead and do it real quick just so we can take a look at it. All it's going to do is even out those polygons. They might create the same polygroup, but that area on the inside is still the same. This area over here is still the same. So to solve for this, we're going to use something called Dynamesh. And Dynamesh is found right here, a couple steps up above Z-remesher. And when I choose Dynamesh, you can see it fuses those overlapping bits of geometry right here where the stem meets the bulb. And that's what I'm looking for, because I want to be able to sculpt all of that around there. So now that I have that in here, we could go back and take a look real quick. I'm just going to hit Control-Z real quick, what the functionality of some of these guys are. We'll come back to some of these throughout the semester, but that resolution is a reflection of how many active points. We don't need to worry about any kind of sub-projection on, I think, on a shape like this. But if I brought down the this number a little lower, like maybe around 80, and I Dynamesh, the poly count's a little bit lower. That's all it's really done. But when we do this, you can see we get these kind of wobbly intersections, which are fine. You can still sculpt these, and everybody basically does. But if you now want to go back and use Z-remesher to kind of square that out, it will take into the factor that these guys were just Dynamesh together, so they can work together. And that's kind of how I will work at times, just to make sure that like everything kind of starts off with these nice even polygons and active points here. So now that I have this, what I could do is start taking a look at other areas of the design that I want to hit for this flower, and that would be these petals and how they kind of break from the budded area right here. So what I'll do is maybe play around with the shape just a little bit, maybe shrink it down or move it. We'll just use the move right now. We'll just use move. Yeah. Because the idea is that this is kind of a already bloomed flower. And I'm using the shift key to kind of scale this down by using smooth, because the smooth will pull some of these guys a little bit closer together. There we go. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is go back to my insert mesh brush, and we have the sphere, you know, the one that we were using before. This time we're going to go back and use some maybe some local symmetry on this. We'll see how it works with it. I did make some adjustments of this going up and down, so local symmetry might not be the best approach to this actually. So you can see that when I have symmetry turned on and we're trying to find center, it can't find center because it's not proportion on each side. So what we could do is make sure symmetry's off. We could create one of these guys. Let's go ahead and turn off solo so that way it just doesn't blink when I move it around. And now we got another petal. I turned off solo so that way when I move this it doesn't disappear. Because if it's turned on, we do a solo, it might make the new ones disappear, so we just turn that off. And all I'm going to do with this is start sculpting this guy right here. I'm not going to unmask this. You know, I can still invert it and go back and forth, but I'm leaving it like this so I can kind of make some adjustments to just this form. So I'm kind of just moving it around. And what I'm going to do is shape it into one of these petal forms right here. So I'm just kind of find a good angle for it. I'll even rotate it around so it's easier for me to sculpt around. I'm just kind of finding that shape. The center of this thing kind of goes back because it's meeting this area. Let's go ahead and move this a little bit up and kind of rotate it into position. Alright, so, oops, did not mean to hit tab. So, we're getting to the point now if I hit the space bar and I start, well, I guess we're not there. We'll have to talk about resizing everything at some point, but I think we're okay right now. Scale. I was worried about like maxing things out, so if you see if I'm maxed out with the brush, I kind of max out the surface of the terrain. But we could talk about how we can change some of that stuff later on. I don't think it's going to be an issue right now. Let's get in here and use that flatten brush for a little bit. Shift F to kind of turn that off and increase its intensity. Switch over to my Cintiq for a little bit just to kind of work these edges. But again, I've mentioned this in lectures before, you don't need a Cintiq to do these type of movements. All right. So I've done a lot of movement for these guys. You can see that the geometry for this is well, a little bit stretched on each one, but I should be able to reuse this guy right here. And I never unmasked one area. And if you need to mask, let's say that both of these guys were, you need to mask one area, but they're both active. What you could do, there's a couple things you could do. So let's say I need to create a mask for this red area right here. I'm holding on Control and Shift, and I tap the blue, and then I could tap it again, and it'll invert what I had selected hidden. And then I could just hold on Control and tap in the negative space, and then I hold on Control Shift and just Control and Shift and tap to reveal everything again. So I'll go through that again because that's fairly confusing. I can tell, you know, you have to do it over and over again to kind of figure out what I've done here. So we're basically masking by polygroup. So if I hold on Control and Shift and I tap the blue, all I've done is hide the stem. And if I tap the blue again, I hide the petal. I could do this the opposite way by holding on to Control and Shift and tapping the stem and do the same thing. Now we're going to hold on Control and click in the negative space. And then we're going to hold on Control and Shift and click in the negative space again. Give it a double tap and it'll bring it back. So that's one of the useful things about working with polygroups, is that we could select between that. If there was no difference between this polygroup and this polygroup, we wouldn't be able to isolate the petal very easily. So let's go ahead and duplicate this petal to make another one. I'm holding on to the Control key and I'm moving this guy. So I could use these cones at the end, and I could use these guys down here, but I won't be able to do it with scale. You won't be able to do it with rotate. It's only with these transition ones that are with moving. So all I'm doing right here is kind of rotating this guy to position. I don't mind if they're overlapping. We're going to go back and edit this anyways. We just want kind of a good start to it, that's all. Where do we want our petals? Where do we want that form to be? And now that I have this one, go ahead and solo this again just so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to hold on Control and do it again, so I got another one of these guys. And we're just going to place this one. Now I'm going to hold on to Control again, and we'll go ahead and duplicate this one. And we'll go ahead and make one more. We'll maybe split it between one of these sides. So I think it'd be better if it was on the top, so I'm just going to duplicate one at the top. Alright, so now I need to kind of move some of these other guys around. So let's go back into talking about how polygroups work. So I'm going to the area that's still under Tool. Everything we've doing today is under Tool, with the exception of the rendering. But we're going to go under Tool, and we're going to go to Polygroups, and we're going to go to Auto Group. And you can see it changed everything into different colors, meaning that all of these guys have their own individual polygroup. And I could go back now and select individual petals. So if I want to select maybe this green guy right here, I could hold on Control and Shift, give it a click, I have it selected. I could rotate them around. Control Shift, click this guy, move it around, Control Shift. You see how easily it makes work with these. Now this will take some time to kind of get used to, so I would suggest being patient. You know, if you find yourself getting too bogged down by trying to get this little system down, just continue working through this, because you know we're making still a fairly simple flower for this exercise. So I wouldn't overthink it. So now I'm going to start pulling these guys in. I got them kind of cornered in, and the flower itself kind of goes up like this. So I want to kind of take all these guys and kind of rotate them in. So let's go ahead and rotate you. And finally, you. All right. So one of the things we are looking at here after we've done this is how we can continue to manipulate and adjust this flower shape. You know, we have, let's go ahead and go back to solo. And by the way, I'll mention this just because it's right here and you might accidentally hit expose and you might see your mesh go crazy like this. If that happens, just click it again. It'll all go back to the way it was. We'll maybe talk about why expose is there, but probably won't need to too much in the semester. So what we're going to do now is maybe continue working with this shape right here. Let's work with our stem a little bit. This is where I've started making some adjustments to this guy. So what I'm going to do, though, just to make sure I don't affect any of the petals, I'm going to use move topological because that'll help me make some adjustments. You can see I can move this set of polygroups and not have to worry about this set of polygroups. It makes it a lot easier to kind of navigate and push some of the stuff around. Alright, so we have a little bit better looking of a flower. What I'm going to do before I start sculpting any more into this, and I might even fuse some of this together, I want to kind of refine some of my shapes here. So I'm going to go ahead and Shift F and show you how everything looks right now, and I'm going to subdivide it once. So we got a little bit smoother of a shape. And then we're going to what I'm going to do is go to an area under the geometry tab called clay polish. I'm going to give it a click, and what that's doing is kind of sharpening some edges around my flower, but it's also making a mask on it. So I'm going to hold on Control and Shift click out of it so you can see where there's a little bit of a kick when I do that. You see it right here because there's a mask over everything and I don't want to affect it that way. So we have this set up. Let's go ahead and do a quick Z remesh after that, so that way it kind of holds its form, and then we could kind of sculpt on top of it. So Z remesher, let it do its thing. It'll kind of close out our polygroups. We'll talk about ways we could say keep that from happening in a future class, but not so important for where we're at right now. Now it's kind of pinch. I'm going to use pinch to kind of go over some of these areas right here to kind of pull in my petals just a little bit, just at the tips and some other areas. So that's what I kind of see in my flowers, just the little petals. If you see what I'm saying, that like these little areas right here, I want to get that kind of shape in there before I start working too far into the petals. There we go. I might even kind of pull these guys into themselves also. Kind of move them in. Now what I really want is a little bit of overlapping because I'm going to Dynamesh all these guys together, and what's going to happen is going to fuse the petals to the back of this, which is fine. You know, this isn't going to be what I emphasize in my renders. Will be maybe a little bit what's going on the interior here, so I'm not too concerned about what's happening right here because it's not going to be a shot you see. But I do want to have all these guys put together because I want to kind of even out the polygons. I want to be able to start painting on it, and maybe adding a couple little other details. I haven't decided whether or not I want these little wormy looking things right here, whatever these things that look like Cheetos. I might add those in. I haven't decided yet, but I want to kind of push through just this portion so that way we could move on to talking about wrapping up the exercise. So again, what I'm going to do is Dynamesh them together, and I'm going to let it be a little bit higher. I'm going to go like whatever 176 is. Ooh, way too much. That is way too much. You can see this is dense. I don't want to go that much. I guess at 80 was fine. So you can see where it kind of pulls those little details in to each other. They fuse together, which is fine. Like I said, this is just a flower that it's going to be part of the scene, but it's not going to be like the main attraction of it by any means. Where the insect is what's going to highlight everything. So I'm going to hit Shift F. And what I'm going to do is start painting my flower. I'm going to look at some of the details that I get from my reference that I have right here, like pink and white and that green, and paint that into my flower. So I guess we could start off with, I guess we could do we'll start off with this white. I think that's probably where I'll start off with this one. We'll go white and fill object, and we'll keep it at the matte cap gray. We'll go ahead and let that matte cap gray be kind of the starter for all the stuff that we create on this. We'll come back and talk about more of these materials in a future class, but matte cap gray will work. So we should have the flower be completely white right now, so we could go back over to our standard brush, and I'm going to kind of reset it to everything. Let's go ahead and just reset all of our brushes so that way we don't see all these quick picks up here. All my brushes should simplify it down. There we go. All right. So what I'm going to do is maybe start painting out some of that green base to the flower down here. So let's turn off my add, turn on the RGB, and I'm just going to kind of fill it in heavy to start off with, even up into there. And I'm allowing it to do that kind of fade off. That little fall off is actually something I want here, because that's kind of what happens with, you know, when we take a little green in there and stuff. So all right, and let's go ahead and put in some of the pink on there. So let's move Pure F out of the way. Just kind of filling in some heavy pink to start off with. Okay, and then we'll add in, I think I'll use some of that, we'll use some texture on this. I think that's what we'll use. So I'm going to go into my alphas and maybe choose some of this like kind of veiny looking one. You see how it kind of has this veins, but if we have it in a brush form, we can actually get some of that kind of idea that we have right there. That's what I'm going to kind of use. And I'm going to subtract that just a little bit. I'll take down the intensity as well, so that way I'm going over this. I'll go ahead and subdivide as well before I do that, so that way when I'm going across it's a little bit softer like this. Maybe increase that intensity a bit more. There we go. And then I'll use the shift key to kind of, I'm kind of just tapping the shift, or tapping left mouse button clicking while using shift to kind of smooth the color and the depth out. Oh, there's my dog. So we're not going to go too deep into creating a flower, though. you can make yours as detailed as you want. Since mine's only going to go a little bit in here, I'm not going to overthink it. Let's go ahead and maybe get some of that yellow in there as well. I do want that to be a little bit yellow in there, so I'll turn off my alpha for this. Maybe we'll use alpha 1, just so I get a little bit of color in there. Like I said, simple flower. Now what I'm going to do is maybe scale this and maybe make some sort of simple adjustments for our scene. Kind of choose where I want its location to be. So you guys will make an extra flower after this. So you should be making 2 flowers, and you know, if you, I will say it's fine just to go ahead and put a different paint job on this, but I would also say like if you want to duplicate this object. So let's go ahead and hit the Q key real quick, and what we'll do is go over to our subtool, and here's our flower. We'll even rename it right here. So we'll go rename FLOWER, flower. We can make another flower object. This guy right here. His name is flower. There we go. Trying to get this guy to work. Give me 1 second here. There we go. I had a little trouble renaming it for a second. Okay, if I needed to duplicate this flower, I could just make sure I have this layer selected, and I could choose duplicate. So now flower 1, flower 2, you don't automatically see it inside the viewport, but it's there. All you need to do is just kind of walk it off of that area. So if your second flower is going to be based off of your first, this is what I would require for you to be able to get full credit for the flowers, is that you have to change its geometry to a certain degree and change color information. So just for example, you know, change this to blue, go in with the blue and start painting blue in this, or and then also maybe and I'm using the masking options right here to kind of change the direction of it, you know, try kind of make it unique so that way they don't look like they're a clone of each other. But yeah, I'll let you guys kind of decide where you want to push that. I'll go ahead and delete this guy, but that'll be your choice how much you want to go into building your second flower. So the last thing we're going to cover when it comes to like kind of working with the plants for this and dipping our toe into some interesting concepts is working with the fiber mesh brush and stuff, and how we kind of work with creating things like grass and stuff inside, because that would be really difficult to do one blade at a time, and you know, the way that we did our flowers. So I'm going to show you guys how you could start working with fiber mesh early. Now be wary, this can really bog down your machine if you're not careful with it. So the settings that I'm going to cover with you guys today will kind of to be an introduction into how to manage how much fiber mesh will control new geometry inside your scene. So if we take a look under Lightbox and under fibers, these are all fibers that we have right here, all of them. Right now I have terrain selected, and what I'm going to do is choose this guy right here, this grass. I'm just going to give it a quick double click. And you'll see that the fibers are all over the place. You know, we got grass growing over the entire object. We'll go ahead and hit Control Z to make it stop. I think I can do it there. There we go. Looks like it just kind of hopped to the side. I can actually turn this off if I need to, but that's fine. There we go. That's fun. So let's turn off the preview to with fiber mesh. So I'm just going to go to the fiber mesh options over here, and let's turn off preview. So basically what we've done when we go to Lightbox and we just kind of double click one of these guys. So let's take the one that, like, you know, is gangly one right here, and we see this. It's applying it to every bit of the surface of our terrain. I'll go ahead and turn it back off. And this over here is going to help us control a little bit what we see inside of the scene. So this is really cool stuff. I'm going to hold on to control, and I'm going to start masking out areas where I would like to see grass be formed. So you can see I'm kind of arcing this out because I'm thinking about my staged area for my insect, so I could have an insect here with a wall of grass and maybe a flower or two popping out the side. So I'm kind of choosing where that wall of grass is going to be. I might kind of tap in some other areas here, see if maybe I want a couple blades of grass. That's fun. Keep on jumping all over the place. Give me 1 second. Had to go back a couple steps because of I must have hit a hotkey that I wasn't aware of. So okay, so let's go back and put that wall in. I'm just putting in a mask in this area. And what we're going to do is go back over to that light box, and we're going to look for the same ones that I had before. These fibers right here, which is kind of like grass. I'm just going to give it a double click, and what you can see is that it's hitting just the areas that we had for masking. So let's go over this again because I must have left some mask on here. So let's go ahead and mask just this corner right here, light box. There we go. So I just close the light box out, and we could take a look at how the grass is kind of functioning. Like I said, it's following that area of shadow that I have right here. You can also see it's kind of swathing over to the right a little bit. So what we'll do is go under the modifiers under fiber mesh, which is still under your tool areas. This is fiber mesh, and we'll change the modifiers and take down the max fibers a little bit lower. In fact, we could get these guys super low, so you can see like we could less is kind of more in this. So something like this is something I'd probably want to work with because I don't want to block it out completely from all angles. It's got some kind of droopiness to this, so this one probably has a little bit more gravity, so I'm just kind of take the gravity of this back, and you can see it kind of lifts it up, but it doesn't like totally kill. If I wanted to make it go straight up, I could just go far over this, but let's go over here just a little bit, so that way we do get a little bit of the curvature on this. I'm also going to take down the length a little bit, so we see length right here. Not too much. There we go. I think that'll work. Now, this stuff isn't geometry yet. It's only a preview of geometry. We could take a look at what's going to look be like in a final render by clicking on this BPR button. It'll look like grass. That looks like grass. So we need to tell it to be a mesh. So from here, after we've made some adjustments to these, then we click on accept. And now we've accepted that as being geometry. If we look in our subtool now, we got something listed as fibers. This is the grass right here. Okay. So let's go ahead and set this up for completion, because we basically land on everything we need for the exercise in this demo. I may produce a little bit more content for this in a silent demo below. I haven't decided yet, but I want to make sure we cover saving this project out and how we turn it into the gradebook. So we need to do a couple things here. First, we're just going to go ahead and save this. We're going to go File, Save. Up here, we're Tool. We're going to go Save As, and this time I'm just going to call this Exercise 1. In fact, we could go by this. We'll just go Garrison _ Exercise 1. So this would be the file that you turn into the Dropbox for this exercise. So is this the Z tool file? So you'll turn that in. And now what we need is maybe a turntable of this work right here. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you guys a little bit about the camera work that's going on here. This is between dynamic perspective and perspective. So I'm turning this onto dynamic perspective, so I can get a little bit of a sense of distortion on this. And for this, all we're going to do is something very simple. This is a very simple process, but there are a few steps to it. Because all we're really wanting to do is have this be a turntable where this will rotate around in circles like this as a video. So I'm going to open up Movie, and I'm going to drag this guy right here over to the right. I'm doing that because these windows appear like to disappear really quickly and it could drive you crazy. And what we're going to do is tell Zbrush to render out a turntable movie of our diorama. But there are some very specific things we need to adjust on this. In the movie selection, the first categories with these two orange areas, this is describing how large the document is going to be around here, and medium's fine for what we do in class. But if you want to have like a larger resolution render, large is the way to go. And then there's dock and window. So window's going to record everything. Out here we're talking about like the user interface. You would see this little face up to the corner, and we don't want that. We just want the document, which should be just this area right in here, just the canvas, the staged area. And what I'll do real quick, just to kind of demonstrate what's going to happen if you don't modify some of this stuff, I'm going to keep it the way it default is, and you'll see a few different things that are going that you wouldn't want on this. So I'm just going to click on like turntable and let it do its thing. It's going to do a turntable. There we go. And then I'm going to click on play the movie, which show it, and you can see when we saw this right here under play movie, what we see right there is a couple things. The user interface, like I mentioned, the Zbrush user interface is on here because we didn't have it set to document. And then we see these intro and outro videos that are set to it, which, you know, say like ZBrush, and then it says ZBrush. So it's introducing your render with ZBrush, and then it's exiting the video saying it's ZBrush as well. So we need to turn all that stuff off. So I'm going to click on delete because I just did a turntable I didn't want to keep. So let's change this to document, and then let's get rid of that title image and overlay image. So I'm starting with title image. I'm going to say fade in time 0, fade out time 0. The overlay image right here is something where you'd see ZBrush like down in here or in another area. That's why we're taking this down to 0. So if we were to take a look at a turntable right now as it spins around and we hit the play button, what we should see now is just the diorama. So go ahead and hit the play button. Yeah, that's all we need. All right, so let's go through one last detail here. Let's go ahead and delete this guy. We're not going to use BPR rendering for this. Well, actually, yeah, I guess we could go ahead and do BPR rendering. I think it's important that we talk about this. So if we were wanting to have the highest quality render for this, if I was to hit the turntable button, it'd spin this around, but it wouldn't have the details that it has right here. So I hit the BPR button, so I have these shadows underneath my scene. I have them on top of these areas. And now if I click on turntable, we'll start seeing it produce the movie or render it out. So what I'll do, I'll go ahead and wait. I'll hit the pause button on my recording, and I'll wait for this to complete. It'll probably take, I don't know, it looks like it might take another 5 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and talk about how we get this submitted into the Dropbox after it's finished rendering. Alright, so ZBrush has finished rendering my turntable. If I was to click on the play movie button right now, we see the turntable. Now, to get this into the Dropbox correctly, we need to make sure that this is a file that's pushed out of ZBrush. It cannot be what we assume that would be the right direction by clicking Save As, because this is a Z movie and we cannot use Z movies. Those won't open up on a regular media player, and some of these can be a little bit larger for no reason. So Excuse me. So what we're going to use is export. So export movie will make this be an MPG or MPEG, and this would be something you could upload the video to, like ArtStation or YouTube, something like some sort of platform you want to be able to show your work off from. So I'm still in my exercise 1 folder for this, so all I need to do is just type in my name, Harrison_exercise1. You can go over here, let's rename this and just take it back. There we go. So I hit save. We should see a quick turnaround of this, and what's happened is that it did a process render to generate that file. So now I could take those 2 files from my folder and turn those in. So I'm going to go ahead and click over here to kind of show you what I'm talking about real quick. So yeah, clear some of that up soon. Let's go to Moose, and let's trace this guy back to exercises and project 1, and there's the movie clip right here that we need, and the exercise. So these are the 2 files we'll need to turn in. So I would just, maybe if you want to throw them in a zip folder, you can. Just actually we can just select them both and do that right now if we want to, or you can just turn them in separately, one at a time if you want to. They should kind of stack in order, but if you want to have them both in one folder, sometimes it's easier to do that. I would just and now I can throw both of these guys in there. Let's toss you and you. And if you, in the future, when you have like references, you'll just take your flower, like the flower reference right here, and throw them in there. Then I can select this guy, right click, and then we're just going to go to send to compress zip folder. It'll process all those items that are inside of it as a zip folder, and this is what you could be turning into the Dropbox. So if you have questions about that, please send me an email if you need me to review it, or any other questions you might have about this exercise, because we'll start working on the project in the next video. Again, good luck, guys. I mean, it's a bit of a challenge because we've covered a lot of stuff, you know, in the first few lectures, you know, on how to work and navigate through these meshes. So my suggestion is to, when you run into any kind of roadblocks, be sure just to email me. I'll probably play around with this terrain a little bit more, kind of spruce it up a little bit, because, you know, the lecture flower is not my favorite flower. I'll probably go in here and kind of really detail one to kind of put in with the insect, but I want to make sure we were able to get through all topics on it. So I'll probably clean this up and maybe even add in some color, like some moss or something like that to this. So what I'll do is maybe include in a silent demo of me touching this up at some point, so that way you guys can see it kind of finished up. But other than that, guys, good luck, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.